Hi there, welcome back to the Flask Mastery series. In this session, we are going to implement the endpoint that retrieves all our authors from the database alongside their data. So let's get started. So within our user controller, I'm going to make use of the getAllUsers function and route. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it here. So the route for this task is going to be /authors, and then the function name is going to be getAllAuthors. So instead of us having a variable called allUsers, this is going to be updated to allAuthors. So what I can do, I can actually make sure that I'm renaming for all cases whereby this variable exists. So with the fact that we are only interested in fetching authors, we have to query against the database in a way that we are filtering the data to only fetch users with the type authors. So this is going to be user.query.filter by. So we are going to filter the users against the user type attribute, and the value is going to be author, and we shall ensure that we are getting all these users. So I'll pass in the all function. So to get for serialization, this is going to be authors data, and the way we are going to loop through is going to be different in a way that we are going to ensure that we are using a variable author. So I'll update this to for author in all authors, then this is going to be updated to author so our authors have the ID, the first name, the last name, the full name, an email address, the contact. I think for now we do not need the type being returned in the response, but we can pass in the biography with the fact that all authors have a bio. So this is going to be the biography. Then we need the created at timestamp. So within our models, we defined a backref attribute on a user that is companies, and same applies to the book model, where we defined a silent attribute called books. So that means that a user can have one or more companies, or a user can have one or more books. So to cater for this relationship, we are going to also append a new key that is going to be companies, and initially this is going to be now for cases whereby the author doesn't have any companies or books created for him or her. Then we also need the books, and still this is going to be empty or null. So before we append the data, we also have to ensure that for cases whereby an author has either books or companies that were created for him, we have to ensure that we are returning this data. So we have to add the books or the companies if they do exist in the response. Python has the has attribute function, where we can pass in an object for which we want to check whether its attribute has the data we want to access. So the first parameter is going to be author, since this is the variable that we are using to loop through, and this is the object that is coming from the data on our user model. So the next attribute that we want to access is now going to be the companies. When I try to hover, we are being told that the second attribute is always a string, because we can see that this is str, the type. So I'll ensure that this is a string by adding the quotes. So if has attribute, then this So this can be updated to author info instead of user info. Author info. Now, with the fact that the author info is a dictionary, for me to be able to access the company's key, I'm going to open the angle brackets, then I pass in the company's key such that I append it with data. And for this case, I'm going to ensure that I'm using a list so as to easily serialize it. So within the list, I'm going to create an object or a dictionary, and we're going to have the ID, and the ID is going to be book.id. So this is going to be book.id. Then the book has a title, not forgetting that this is a value for the key. Then we shall also go ahead and append the price. Let me actually check up the book model. We have the price, the genre. I think for now we can return a few of them. So we have the price, we have the genre, then we also have the price unit. A book also has the publication date, the description. So this is going to be the description. Then we also have the publication date. Lastly, a book also has the image. So I'll add the image, and not forgetting the timestamp. So having us defined that object, we now continue with our loop. So this is going to be for book in author dot books. So having defined this, oh my bad, so looks like I've been adding the attributes for the book instead. So what we can do, we can update this to books, and then instead of passing in a key for the companies, this can be books. Okay, so this is now going to be the same case for the companies. So if has attribute, then we pass in the author, and then we pass in the companies, not forgetting that it must always be a string. So we shall access the author info dictionary, and then the key is going to be companies. So our company will have the ID, and then the value for the ID is going to be accessed through the object company.id, and then each company is going to have a name, and then this will be accessed from the company dot the name, and each company is going to have an origin. This will be accessed from the company dot origin. I think for now we can keep these precise. This must be a colon. Then we look for company in author dot companies. So having catered for all these, we have to ensure that we are appending the author info within our authors data list. This is going to be author info. So having appended that, the message here is going to be all authors retrieved successfully, and then we can keep this precise to total, and then the length is going to be authors data. Then instead of users, this is going to be authors. Then we pass in the authors data. Okay, so for now we are going to go ahead and test this endpoint to ensure that it is working as expected. So I'll make sure that I'm running the application. So within Postman, I'm going to create a new request. So the name for the request is going to be get all authors, and then the URL is going to be user/authors, and not forgetting that we have to ensure that we are protecting our endpoints from unauthorized users. So I'll ensure that I pass in the JWT required decorator, and same applies to this endpoint. So when I make a new request, we can see that we are required to pass in the authorization headers. So I'm going to ensure that I copy the access token, Then I'll pass it in within the authorization headers and make a new request. So when we make a new request, we can pretty see the kind of data that is being returned. Looks like this is author name, so this can be updated to name. So apparently all authors do not have any details related with the books and the companies. So what we are going to do, we are going to work with our database and create a company so that we can test our logic for a particular author. So I'm going to work with author ID 3, and this is Baroda Angel. So Baroda Angel is an author with an ID 3. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new company for Baroda Angel within the database. So the ID for this case can be 1, and then the name is going to be Baroda Companies. Then the origin is going to be Uganda, and then the description can be Baroda as of now. So the user ID we have to work with is 3, and that must be for Baroda Angel. Then the created art is going to be right now, so I'll update this and click on go. So we can pretty see that this company has been created and it belongs to user ID 3. So when I make a new request, this is what is returned. So that means that our logic is working perfectly fine. Of course, we are not going to be adding the companies manually within the database. We are going to create an endpoint that is going to cater for this in the future. So that is all for this session. Thanks for watching and see you again in the next session.